Welcome back to the Dear Global Leader second episode, a solo episode of the Dear Global Leader. I'm super excited again for today to decrypt one of the best or worst strategies that will help us to scale our business globally. And talking about scaling, this was the topic number one of the solo episode, because usually when you discuss about the global business, this is one of the first steps to go globally, is to go implement your a new agency abroad. But then the second topic will actually be, when you arrive, you may fail or succeed depending on this implementation. And this will be the topic of the today's podcast, is how to succeed when you go abroad based on the cultural shift. And we have had a lot of example of failure of big companies. And then we found different models for different companies. But for the sake of this episode, I will take one example of one of the biggest companies and one of the biggest failure on his journey. And of course, since then, they learn along the way. But I think it's a great example to take for this notion. So we'll not look at every strategies of every countries. If it's interesting to you, I will do another episode. But let's start on one example. And this example is Walmart. So Walmart is the biggest wholesaler powerhouse of the world. So big retail, a company with about $600 billion of sales. And yet they failed completely to launch their business in the first market of Europe, which is Germany. They have lost about 1 billion euro in 8 years of their presence in Germany. And this led them to completely exit the area. And the question today that we'll answer is how, or even why, such a big, well-oiled powerhouse of the retail industry completely failed in a really consumer driven and also where a market that also have money to buy. And you may think, okay, maybe they failed, they are too big. But it's actually a question that you can also ask yourself, because regularly when you open new agencies, this will be your challenges. You will have to grow yourselves. And if you miss the cultural adaptativeness, you will fall straight into the same path. So in this new business decrypt and strategy decrypt, we'll look at this failure. And the number one factor that I want that we discuss is actually the market context of Germany. Because when we look into it, you will really understand naturally that there were some conditions that Walmart didn't really pay attention to. So first, Walmart is a company that comes from the US, and in the US, they were completely non-union focused. And if you live in Europe, or if you have done business in Europe, and especially in Germany, you know that there is this principle of co-determination and also strong unions in these markets. And the retail is not an exception to that. So when Walmart were using the same frameworks and the same mindset that they were using in the US, to not be collaborative with the unions and also to not include them, it was not something that helped them to implement in the German market, because it's well known that to succeed in the German market, you will have the high importance to collaborate with these unions. So this was point number one. Point number two, or at least in this section of the analysis, is the typography, the geography of the Germany, and this can also be part of other European countries. When you go to the US, something that I really love about it is the skylines. I feel it's really beautiful. But if you look at the geographies, this also explains why Walmarts are a big part of the US markets. You have sometimes to do 1 hour to go to the Walmart, because inside the downtown there is not a lot of supermarkets. And this was my case when I was living in the US. I had to take the car and do 40 minutes outside downtown to go to a Walmart. It's not really the same system in Germany. You don't have like a skyline in a big city and nothing for kilometers. You actually has a lot of like It's highly fragmented with a lot of density of urban area, so small villages, small some cities, and people prefer to have different stores of different sizes, but that are closer to them. So this was again something that was not really taken into consideration by Walmart and was not really supporting their strategy um, inside the German markets. And lastly, it's also that German market is one of the biggest, is the biggest actually market, consumer market for the European area, and it's highly price sensitive. And you may think, okay, Walmart is positioned in a certain way on the framework, and maybe it will pass because they have a lot of discount and a lot of bundling, so they can maybe do some good prices. The fact is that the competition is really intense. So the price are really important. And Aldi and Lidl were really making major discount and were already implemented. So this was also something that positioned Walmart a bit upper budget and was also something that were challenging for the market. And so now, second pillar of this description, we will look at Walmart's side. And you will see some of the argument will answer to each other. So just to come back on the business model that were misaligned for Walmart, when I talk to the geography, I forgot to tell you that Aldi has more than 6,000 store in Germany, and Walmart just had 85 stores. And it's not because they were not covering the geography, it's because of the scale of the shop, and also what they thought was the habits of the people were similar to the US. And if we continue to the US centric, Walmart, when they arrived to Germany during these years, they really or they really imposed, sorry, the US mindset, meaning that they were not working with the unions. They were US executives that were using US frameworks and US mindsets. And they were also not really good at onboarding these expats into the region or into the language. And this makes seems basic, but it's actually an error that we see a lot, even with, for example, a Chinese company or Chinese development, where they send Chinese to build places, and then they leave, and then they exploit the place, and then they leave. They do not try to infuse in the culture, and also to take the mindset maybe, or adapt a bit to the locality and what the local place is doing, and how they could use the best of both countries. So this was like just two examples to mention that it's not basics actually. It's actually very basic that we think that what we know is the standard and we should just use what we think will work. And unfortunately, with cultural and cross-cultural business and globality, you will most of the time figure it out that you will fail. And lastly, the culture also of the US was brought to the customer experience. And this was also something that the German population has some difficulty with. So when you go into a store in the US, you always have this the service that will smile and greet you, and this will feel very warm and sometimes a bit too much for European, and a bit superficial, or even sometimes intrusive. You know, you arrive and you are my dear, my darling, and this can feel very close, and maybe this was not such a cultural norm in Germany. But on top of that, also the German were valuing efficiency and not the small talk. So this was not really fitting them. And inside, if we look also inside the configuration of the store in Walmart, the model is more like bigger size, and there were also a misalignment with the strategy of the offering. So all these were some of the missteps that pushed out Walmart compared to the competition. And the third pillar of this decrypt will be a bit bridging both and figured out um, what have been this misstep into the framework. And we realized that despite the same criteria economically between the Germany, one of the biggest or the biggest market in Europe, and North America, so US being the biggest market in North America. They had some criteria that were similar with buying power and so on. Unfortunately, it's not because you succeed in one that you will succeed in the other if you make extraction of the administration and the cultural challenges. And I can also take example of other competitors for you to prove this point. So Aldi and Lidl, they were structurally already coming from there, but they had very good offering and they were culturally aligned, and this made them really unbeatable in this region. And you may think, okay, maybe culturally the US were too far away of the European countries, so maybe another big player of European would have done a much better work. But we also have Carrefour. This is a French company that also struggled a lot in Germany. So this is also to show to you that you don't have to be just a pure player in European and culturally close to really crush in this market. It's really in competitive markets. It's really important to understand other criteria than just the business model and the porter style, to make your presence in the market, because these markets are strictly very hostile to foreign newcomers. So what I really like about this business decrypt of failure of the Walmart in the adaptability cross-cultural business is that you will always need to be humble, to listen, and to adapt. And this is actually the same three skills that you will need for cross-cultural understanding and awareness to work for your leadership if you have like a cross-cultural team. So I think it's a great lesson to also extract from this. But coming back to the lesson, what are the takeaway of this episode? Um, and I will extract three of them. I will not repeat myself, but first one is understand the local customer. You really need to, step one, understand what are the norms and understand really the persona and adapt to then adapt to your offering. The second one is when you will launch a new agency, it will be important that you hire local manager and local champions that will be able to adapt the playbook. So some that have the ability to understand what is the core, as you were saying in episode one, and also that have the local understanding of the market to be able to see what are the tweaks that we'll have to do in order that the playbooks works. So again, you don't have to adapt the company, you have to adapt the playbook and to the locality and the cultural path. And lastly, it's about market selection. And this is an important topic in strategy. Usually the strategy is in two parts: where to play, how to win. So you may know about that. And in business, usually we want to do everything. We love to see potential. And what we do not do a lot is where to not play. And this can really prevent you to fall into this type of situation, as Walmart, for example, didn't consider that even if it was a big, good financial market, they were already, if you do the Porter analysis, there were already a lot of competitions, and it was very price tense, and it would have been very, very hard to win in these markets. All to say that the third takeaway is really also decide where not to play in your analysis. So I hope this was helpful to you, and if you have other ideas, just send it to me. Good. If you love the podcast, don't forget to subscribe, so then I will be able to continue do all of this analysis. And I see you in the next episode. Bye.